the only engineering department awarded for the second time the distinction of Maria de Maeztu Excellence Center for Spain. We are also starting an international Erasmus Mundus Masters in AI. And we do some entrepreneurship, some startups and some spin-offs. Maybe we should have all my faculty here today to learn a little bit more, because we do some, but we taking it to product, we don't do probably as well. So I'm looking forward to today. And without taking much more of your time, I pass on, according to the program here, Enrique, is Enrique here? He is not here today. All right, so I didn't shake hands with Enrique, so that's what I was surprised, all right? But Kathy Stein is here, so please, is that right? Is that what, okay.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. I'm Katie Stana. I'm the US Consul General here. And I'm particularly excited to be here today because of the Northeast Ohio connection. I was actually born in Cleveland. Yes. And most of my family, my mom's side of the family is still outside of Akron. So Cuyahoga Falls, Kent, Stowe. My parents actually met at Kent State. So you guys are close to my heart. So thank you to 22 Arroba for your collaboration on the event. And thanks to Vladimir and UPF for hosting us today. Entrepreneurship is in the United States DNA, and engaging and promoting it is one of the pillars of our bilateral relationship with Spain. It's what me and my team here in Barcelona work on day in and day out. In today's world of back-to-back crises, we need the optimism, the passion, and the determination of innovators and entrepreneurs to make the world a better place. Through the consulate's work here in Barcelona, I've gotten to know an amazing variety of founders who have participated in our Academy for Women Entrepreneurs program. I know we have one of our always here today. There you are. All right. See, always in the wild. And just last week, we launched a new mentoring and acceleration program called Jump Startup Women to connect them with opportunities in the United States. Cities and municipalities also play an important role in entrepreneurship and in innovation. They're leading the way in channeling economic opportunities and prosperity for citizens and delivering innovative solutions to solving the urgent challenges we all face, such as tackling the climate crisis and furthering inclusive economic growth in their metropolitan areas. Both Cleveland and Barcelona are on the forefront of public-private partnerships that support the local innovation and startup ecosystem with an emphasis on attracting and retaining talent. Today, we'll learn about the realities of two apparently very different cities, both of which are very close to my heart, which might share more than expected, more than just me. We look forward to this discussion and hope that new synergies are established as a result of today's program. Thank you, Michael, for sharing your experience today, and welcome to Barcelona to you and all of your students. And we're really happy to welcome you here. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm not Enrique. So, well, I'm Xavier Simó, which is the first screen, the first picture that you can see. I'm the president of the Entrepreneurial Commission of 22 Network. Additionally, I'm a professor, mentor, serial entrepreneur, businessman, and president of a consulting firm, international consulting firm. So I'm doing a lot of things, but today I'm here to introduce you a little bit about this district, 22 Network. So what we are going to do today, basically, is I would like to tell you a few things in name of Enrique Urrieta, which is the president of the district. After that, we are going to do a few things, but basically we are going to introduce you Michael Goldberg, which is going to tell you about several things I will tell you later. And finally, I'm additionally come back to you to tell you more details about this district. And finally, Albert Domingo from UPF is going to tell you what UPF, this university, is working and developing the entrepreneurial environment and entrepreneurs. So basically, Well, first of all, in name of 22@, I would like to thank Vladimir and the university for this excellent event, and thank you very much for coming. And obviously, I would like to thank Kathy from the US General Consulate to participate in this event. This is one of the events that we are organizing in this district. And I wanted to tell you a few things about this district that in 5 words, very simple. So for us, a district of innovation district has 5 elements. The first thing is the connection, sea of connection. We must connect people, okay? So we need to be connected because basically every engine, everything that's happening is developed at the moment. We need to wait until the last version of ChatGPT. Maybe will be the last one, but until now, we are still the persons, the people are the key to develop anything new, anything that is going to happen. So this is the first thing, connecting people. The second is innovation. What is the objective or be connected? Create something not new, obviously new, but something better, something that we can improve what exists. So the innovation needs to have part of the goal, but always trying to create something better that exists. So connection, innovation, and the third, I mentioned it before, is the talent. So talent is very important. So and especially international talent. So we have people here in this district from many countries, many languages, nationalities. And the other than very important thing is trained people who has sometimes when I'm talking with the kids, you must suffer the training, but no, you need to teach, we need to teach that they need to learn, and people who really make the effort to learn and to be trained. So this is the reason that we are here in the university, and we have in our district several universities, the majority of the city. So the talent for us and for any district must be very important. The fourth word is interoperability. I love this word. I'm from IT sector, and today any software needs to be interoperability. So how is this here? Well, here for us, interoperability means that we connect all type of companies. We here have corporates, IT corporates. So for instance, in front of us, we have audiovisual big corporation. We have IT corporations around the district. But at the same time, we have startups. We have entrepreneurs. We have a small business. We have, for just in the other side of the street, you can find a law firm. So we have professional. So we need to be connecting, the first word, with different type of people, because the interoperability creates new value, creates more value to the different people. And it's in the past, maybe people in corporate say, no, I'm a corporate, I'm not going to talk with an entrepreneur or a freelance. No, this is the old times. Now we need to be connected. Why? Because the innovation is coming from everywhere. The innovation is coming from people. And finally, the last one is sustainability. And this is very, very important word, because obviously we need to take care of our carbon print. So this is the reason that we promote to come, and the people who is living and working in this district using public transports, trying to walk. Okay, so it is an excellent city to be walking and or bicycle. But this is one thing. The other thing, and very important, connected with sustainability, means living. So this is a district that people is living. So in many other cities, the innovation or the innovative district is in one of the corners or outside the city, and nobody is living. One of the difference here is we can sustain the district because people is living here. So, and consequently, we have bakeries, we have supermarkets, we have a big mall crossing the street. So if you are living, you are connected. And finally, all of this is available, and this event is a good event because all the time we are trying to see the international view of the any district. So this is the reason that we are leading a new initiative to connect the 10th more relevant innovation district worldwide. So we have now an association that are developing together, trying to listen to different point of view, because as you will see, I'm not speaking English. No. I'm speaking the Mediterranean English, which is different. So you will see that I'm not using the right words. Maybe I make mistakes, but it's our style. It's our Mediterranean style. But in our association, international association, we have people from Melbourne, so this is another language. But we are always speaking your language. So finally, thank you for coming from this beautiful city that is Cleveland. That maybe you know that we have the same distance to the north. We are in the same latitude, Cleveland and Barcelona. So we have the same distance to the Pole North. So we are connected. You need to cross a lake, maybe you need to cross other things because you have the lake in the north, we have the sea on the east side, but we are the same distance. So we are really not similar, but it's good to know that we can learn. And as we can learn in both sides, now is the moment to introduce you Michael Goldberg from, sorry, Michael, I need to read all what you do. So Michael is a professor of, I'm going to say, an executive director of the Veale. No, it's not. It's English from Mediterranean style. And Institute for Entrepreneurship at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, and creator of the massive open online course called Beyond Silicon Valley, Growing Entrepreneurship in Transitioning Economies. So Michael Goldberg will present now as sharing ideas to support entrepreneurship between Cleveland and Barcelona. So please, thank you, Michael.
Very good. Okay, let's see. There we go. Well, it's great to be here. Thank you to the hosts. Katie, I love that you're a Clevelander, both by birth and by heart. And yeah, we'll spend a few minutes today talking a bit about some of the things that are happening in Cleveland. And yeah, very much looking forward to the discussion about Barcelona. So just for, I guess, a little bit about myself, I'm a native Clevelander as well. I studied international affairs at Princeton. I spent a couple of years working in South Africa for an NGO on South Africa's first democratic election. And then I switched gears. I went back to grad school. I have my MBA at Wharton. Is my friend Sophie here? There she is. My Wharton friend is in the house and living in Barcelona. And I have a master's in international affairs from Johns Hopkins. And then I got into kind of internet 1.0, America Online. Anybody heard of it? Yeah, a few. You've got mail. So I spent a couple of years working in their international business development group, mostly in Asia. I ended up moving back to Cleveland and setting up a venture capital fund, and then took a position at Case Western Reserve University. I'll see all the hands of the students that are here. Woo! And I'm here this week with a number of colleagues, with a great group of MBA students and undergrad students from Case Western Reserve, as part of both an International Institute course and a new fellowship that we have called the Veale Snyder Fellows. And then a shout out to my friends from the US Department of State for the Fulbright program, which I'll talk about. So anybody but Kiet, my student, can answer this question. Which flag is that? Vietnam, thank you. Where's Kiet? So Kiet's from Ho Chi Minh City, so he wasn't allowed to answer. So I did a Fulbright, which is an amazing. How many of you are familiar with the Fulbright program? It's my Fulbright advertising. Yeah, the State Department team's like, yeah, we know that. So Fulbright is a wonderful, it's sort of the premier international exchange for either American students or faculty members to teach, do research or study overseas. And there's also opportunities for awesome Spanish students and professors to do the same. So I took my family to Hanoi 10 years ago. The girls flanking our son are in college now. So it was a few years ago. And I got asked to do a workshop within the Vietnamese Ministry of Science and Technology. They call it the National Agency for Technology, Entrepreneurship, and Commercialization. And they said, would you do a workshop for us about how Vietnam could become more like Silicon Valley? So that was the question. And before and this is going to be audience participation, not just my students, because I'm giving them a grade for this week, so they actually have to participate, but I'd love to hear from others. So I guess the question I'll pose to you is, and you hear this all the time, right? So it could be conversations in Barcelona. Everybody wants what Silicon Valley has, right? What does Silicon Valley have that everyone wants? Feel free to raise your hand or just shout it out. What is so great about San Francisco and Silicon Valley? Money. Who said that? Okay, talk about what kind of money? Venture capital, angel investors, there's money. What else? Omar. Mindset. What do you mean? Being around people that want to do things. Okay. Great. What else? Jack. Okay, great. My friend from Awe. Okay, connections. Great. What's that? Okay, great. The history. Great. Yeah, sure. Okay. Opportunity. Anna W. Yeah. So all the iconic names. Yeah, great. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Okay. Were you in the Bay Area? Okay, great. Actually, there's a lot of Clevelanders out there as well. Awesome. So yeah, iconic names, companies. Maybe we have to take Facebook off this list. People, right? So this is another little quiz question. All of the people in the middle column actually have something in common. Besides being like young and good looking and startup-y. They all went to Case and they're all from Cleveland and they all left, right? So as we talk about some of the similarities and differences, my guess is one of the things that we don't have in common is that Barcelona is an attractor of talent. We've lost, whether it's Katie, we'd love to have you back. So we lose a lot of talent. So all three of these folks, John Cobbs co-founded Apartment List. Hallie Tecco founded a healthcare accelerator called Rock Health. Matthew Stepka was an early Google employee. So these folks all grew up in Cleveland, went to Case Western Reserve University, moved to San Francisco, and never came back, right? Yes, we have connectivity. We can go visit them, but we are losing a lot of talent. And then the last column, and Franco mentioned it, is, and these are just venture capital funds, and we can talk about what's happening in the world with Silicon Valley Bank and venture capital and all these lovely things out there, but these are all famous investors. So this is what's so great about Silicon Valley and San Francisco, right? So back to Vietnam, I was like, actually, and no offense to my friend Kiet and I've talked a lot about it. I was like, you guys don't really look like Silicon Valley. I'm going to teach you about a different city that I think is more relevant. Katie, it may bring back warm fuzzies. So anyone except for the 40 people I came with. So that's Cleveland, right? So it's funny, like not a lot of people have like heard much about Cleveland. I should have swapped out this picture. So Ricky Rubio, for my Spanish friends in the house, is our backup point guard. But it's funny, when we often travel overseas, you may find this when you're around. It's like Cleveland, they know LeBron. He did give us a championship, but he's with the Lakers now. But a lot of people don't really know much about Cleveland. So what is the history of Cleveland, right? So 100 years ago, we were kicking ass and taking names. Like, we were one of the centers of entrepreneurship in the world. This is our most famous entrepreneur. Does anyone want to guess who this is? John D. Rockefeller. Thank you very much. Is from Cleveland. You can go to his cemetery right near Case, where he's buried. And then what happened to Cleveland? And it wasn't just Cleveland. It was Detroit. It was Pittsburgh. It was lots of cities in what we call sort of the Rust Belt. I mean, this is a textile company, right? So like, you don't make clothing in Cleveland anymore. I mean, those factories closed, the jobs moved into other places. So we were the 5th largest city in the United States in 1920. And by 2012, we were 47, and now we're even lower, right? So our population left. Katie moved to Barcelona. You saw our students, they moved to San Francisco. You know, I was a young person growing up in Cleveland. I was interested in entrepreneurship, like I was going to leave and never come back. But we started this effort, and we can get into it today, and I know even in our week here in Barcelona, we've begun to see how the effort to support and attract startups, there's a lot of different elements to it, and we'll get into it in a second. We were actually, just one more factoid, Entrepreneurship Magazine in 2001 ranked 61 cities in the US and how well they supported entrepreneurship. Does anyone want to guess where Cleveland ranked? Thank you. So Omar's like 61. Yeah, that would be us. So not good. And then what happened, and again, there's elements of it here as well, is and actually our friends at McKinsey actually did a pro bono study to basically like map out, like, if Cleveland was going to get back to a place where it once was, which in many ways is unrealistic. We're never going to be the 5th largest city in the US. And again, unfortunately, although we do have access to fresh water and the winters aren't quite as bad, at least this past one. But we needed to really have an intervention. And just briefly, I'll talk to you about the intervention. So the role of government. And this week, since we've been in Barcelona, we've heard about some of the support that both the region and local government has provided, and we can get into it today. And obviously, it's a big part of the work that you do here. Interestingly, in Ohio, the major part of our support came from our state government. So, the US has 50 states. We have, federal governments that are very much focused on at least in the entrepreneurship space, they're building out the pipeline of research, which you sort of touched on, sponsored research. States and often municipalities are sort of putting in place programs to support commercialization and economic development. So the Third Frontier program, which was started around 2001, and interestingly, just in the world of politics, it was started by a governor named Bob Taft in Ohio, who's a Republican. It's a $2.3 billion sort of commercialization entrepreneurship program. One thing that happened in our state, and unfortunately with the way that politics are in our state, both whether you're an elected official with the same party or certainly with a different party, oftentimes political leaders, you don't get any points if you extend the program of the last person, right? This program has been so successful that it was supported by Republican, then a Democratic governor, and then subsequent Republican governors. So I think it shows when public policy is working, and in this case, the Third Frontier, and we'll talk about the way it's been administered in Ohio. That's been a very important piece of our entrepreneurship story in a place like Cleveland. The other thing that's happened in our community is the role of philanthropy and donors, and it looks a little bit different. I mean, to some degree, the role of the US Embassy, probably less so in a place, although the work that you do touches a lot of people, like the Agency for International Development and more of the developing world countries, and obviously the EU as well, is sort of doing work to support entrepreneurship and economic development. In Cleveland, we actually have a very rich history of philanthropy, and that philanthropy had traditionally supported things like, we have a world-class orchestra. We have probably the 5th best. We were the 5th largest city, and we're not anymore, but we have the 5th best orchestra in the world. We have great art museums. We obviously have great hospitals and social services. This effort, called the Fund for Economic Future, convinced philanthropy to support entrepreneurship and economic development. So that was a very interesting program. And then just very briefly, the ways that these things, actually, you mentioned the State Department program called Jumpstart. We have our own Jumpstart. Jumpstart is an NGO, nonprofit organization, and it's actually an interesting model. It actually has funding that it invests alongside private investors, and because they're a non-governmental or nonprofit organization, once they make the investment, if they're successful on an exit, and the good exits are either an acquisition is the most common, or an IPO, although the IPO market is basically frozen in the US at the moment, then the money comes back into the fund. I'm happy to talk more about this. This NGO has made about 100 investments in Cleveland-based startups. And to use the baseball analogy, like, you only need one home run to have success. One of the investments that Jumpstart made, do you know what it's called when your company sells for over $1 billion? Unicorn. Yeah, a lot of unicorn answers here. So we had a unicorn. They don't happen often, per the term unicorn. So that totally replace the fund. So they turned about $1 million investment into 60 for that fund. So one of the messages in our own work in Cleveland is like, it's all well and good to support startups. If you don't actually have success where founders are making money and investors are making money, this doesn't work. Because you can spend a lot of time introducing amazing startups, but if everyone fails and no one makes money, ultimately this kind of effort that we're all engaged in doesn't work very well. You know, the role of anchor institutions, and I'm excited to learn more about the work that you're doing here. One thing that we did at our own university is, and this was part of the matching money from the state. So we put $1 million out of the operating budget of the university against matched by state money, and our state funding, to the credit of the third frontier. And again, no offense to friends from government. If government is funding something 100% without any skin in the game or match from the private sector, like the chances of success are worse. So our third frontier program basically requires, like in this case, a 1-to-1 match for the money. So we put $1 million in, the state put $1 million in, and this is an example, Cardio Insight. Charu Ramanathan is a biomedical engineering student who came from India, spun out this company, which was acquired by, where's Michael Hill? Medtronic. So Michael, my colleague here, 27 years at Medtronic. Were you part of that acquisition? Did you know about? Okay, good. Thank you for acquiring that company. You know, we actually, among the many things we've talked about, we haven't talked about that. So that's a good example. And I think Medtronic paid $110 million, $120 million. So good example of the ecosystem. I know you referred to kind of spin outs, and we also are trying to do a better job. This is very difficult work. Accelerators, like even during this week, you know, we had a visit to Tech Barcelona. You know, we met a few startups. I mean, the accelerator model and Y Combinator and Techstars are among the most famous in the US. Those are pure private funded models. In Ohio, we have catalyzed the formation of accelerators by using money from the state, and we can talk about that. Angel investors, I know there's an active angel community here, in probably several in Barcelona. In Ohio, to stimulate angel investing, the state did a couple of things, including, like, we have something called the North Coast Angel Fund. So angel funds, the difference between an angel fund and an angel investor is obviously, like, we could come together today as a group as an angel fund. We'd all write a check. We'd give it to Katie's our new, she's going to leave the embassy, is going to be our new manager of the fund. Then that fund is investing in companies. Individual angels may make decisions on investment. The state, through the third frontier, decided to incentivize the formation of angel funds. So we've got a number of these in the state. We can talk about what they've done. Lastly, venture capital. The Ohio Capital Fund, you can tell by its little symbol there, their main funder is the state of Ohio. It's $150 million, what's called a fund of funds, investing in venture funds that have a presence in Ohio. My own venture capital fund has an investment from them. And the idea being that if you are in a market like Cleveland, and we've learned a little bit about the Spanish venture capital community, which doesn't quite sound as robust as some of your neighbors in other parts of Europe. The idea that you could do a fund of funds to fund local venture capital, because, and we can talk about the dynamics kind of post-COVID. I mean, typically venture capital funds in a place like Sand Hill Road in San Francisco want to be close to where their investments are. So that's the idea behind that. So this was my seminar in Vietnam. That before the whole world started using Zoom. That's Skype for our old school. Now we've mentioned AOL and Skype in the same, you know, presentation. And, you know, I did this in 2012. Kia, I don't know how many of these pictures you've been in. Like, I felt like every time I'd give a seminar, there'd be some, like, we'd all have to, like, get together in a picture. So that was Vietnam, which was fun. But, like, I had never taught this, like, as a class. I was like, I just sort of did it as a, like, in the spirit of Fulbright. They asked me to do it, so it was fun. So I came back to Cleveland, and where's my colleague, Stacy? So my colleague Stacy and I worked very closely with a good friend and dean at the school named Fred Colopy. We had just signed on with Coursera. How many of you have heard of Coursera? So I was in Fred's office, and he's like, and I told him about the seminar, and he's like, we just joined Coursera. Would you think about turning this into a MOOC? And I was like, yeah, that sounds interesting. And the true story, I went out and I Googled, I was like, MOOC, had no idea what it was. So like a good entrepreneur, you just say yes. And then you're like, what is that I just agreed to? So we got a grant from a foundation, and I like interviewed all these people. I have a friend that worked at 60 Minutes. There's me with a lot more hair. Well, I did get a good haircut in Barcelona last night. And we put this like up on Coursera, and it's interesting. We sort of started with Cleveland, like, I mean, how many of my Spanish friends here have ever been to Cleveland? Okay, like one. Oh, right, your brother lived there, right? Okay, that one doesn't count. Like people like haven't heard of us. So we were not sure. We're like, all right, let's put this up on Coursera. We're not Silicon Valley. We have a very different set of experiences. And it's, so it started in 2014. So we've had 175,000 students take the class. We have subtitles in 16 languages, which has been really fun. I mentioned actually to Katie on the way in, because it's a mutual friend, just a couple quick stories. I mean, Greece, we were producing the course. They were going through their economic crisis. So they produced their own videos, and we were doing all these sessions. And even like today, and that'll be us later, like sort of passionately discussing and arguing in a good way, about like, hey, what are we doing? What are you doing? And sort of changing ideas. So that was in Thessaloniki. I went to Athens, and we did a session right at the foot of the Acropolis, which was a lot of fun. This was another, it all comes back to some degree to basketball, but this in Kosovo, I only knew about Kosovo, like probably many of you, just because of the war. I mean, I didn't know about it from entrepreneurship. So this guy running sort of an incubator in Kosovo was at a conference in Germany and heard from someone from Dusseldorf who was talking about our course. And then he reached out, and turns out he's also a LeBron fan, which was fun. So we did a whole collaboration, and that was super interesting because Kosovo is a small country. Jakova is a very tiny community, but just this idea that you could exchange ideas around entrepreneurship was quite interesting. Last story I'll tell is just sort of a country where we have less connectivity through our friends, or sort of more of our formal channels in the State Department, but Mehdi Sajapur reached out, and we ended up doing a bunch of stuff. We have subtitles. I think we're one of the only Coursera MOOCs that has Farsi subtitles. And like he was talking about how Tehran and Cleveland had all these similarities. And again, it was just a very interesting experience. And just on a people-to-people level, I mean, actually, one of my students here, Ahed, is originally from Syria. We had a really interesting group of Syrians that had taken the class that were sort of interested in sort of a post conflict Syria and how does entrepreneurship can support. I have this book that I put together, which is just the story of a bunch of people that took the class. And that is it from me. Look forward to chatting more, learning more. It's been a great week. Thank you again to all of our hosts here for inviting us and our students, and look forward to the opportunity to exchange ideas. Thank you. Question? Okay, you don't get rid of me so fast. Questions? And I'd love if you ask a question, both if you're one of the case folks, to introduce yourself so that people can get to know you, or if you're not one of the 50 people I came with, that I know who you are. So what questions or comments would anybody like to make? Yeah.
Mario from Global said that network tech entrepreneurs from Berlin, 10 years now in Barcelona. My question to you is, like, you've been 1 week here with a lot of program. What do you think is Europe missing to become the next Silicon Valley?
I think that, and we met with Buy Hours, we met with All Read. So I met a couple of founders that are certainly on the way up, raising money. The talent that we've met here is pretty amazing. I mean, obviously the fact that it's attracting people from all over Europe. And in many ways, obviously the power of the EU and being able to kind of for mobility between countries. I've often sort of been, it's remarkable to me. I mean, obviously in the US, we can move to San Francisco without a passport, but I think the mobility between countries and the talent that's here, I do think that the access to capital, and it's getting worse, right? I mean, I think for entrepreneurs, and I don't know what your experience has been, sort of raising capital, it's a challenge all over the world. It sounds like, and maybe some of these kinds of programs that we've had that are sort of trying to get more venture capital availability in a place like Spain, or more specifically in Barcelona, but we're entering probably a little bit of a cold winter as it relates to access to capital around the world, but it sounds like that's the case in Spain as well.
Just one funny comment. I think you hit with the right answer. I think our challenge is the language, because in English is venture capital. It's an adventure to run a venture. In Spanish, it's capital de riesgo. And in German, it's risco capital. So it's like a risk. So congratulations. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, Michael. Jack Petito, Master's of Accounting student at Case Western. So I'm curious, in this world tour with Beyond Silicon Valley that's been happening for a while, what has been some of the most interesting perspectives or reactions you've received from the course, and really some of the largest differences you've seen in how it's affected people worldwide, both in the US and everywhere else?
Well, read my book. You know, I've got all the stories. I'll give it to you on the plane, Jack. No, thanks for the question. I mean, it's been, in some ways, it's been like an emotional journey. I mean, we weren't sure that what we were doing in Cleveland was necessarily relevant to other parts of the world. But I think the reality of the struggle, I mean, I think entrepreneurs struggle. I mean, ecosystem builders struggle. There's really no one right way to do this. And I just think that the effort and energy from people that I met around the world, I mean, you know, I'm assuming many of you in the room are either sort of here, well, either because you were forced to come here by me, or that you're interested, that you're entrepreneurs. Like, it takes a crazy kind of person to do this. I mean, there's lots of jobs that are more stable. So it's scary. And I think the risk taking that we see in markets, and again, in a place like San Francisco, I think it's very sort of natural. But you know, I mean, I met lots of awesome people that were taking significant risk. And, you know, I think one of the really nice things, and for those that have sort of dabbled in this sort of MOOC world, like the connectivity, but so I saw relationships form between students. Like, there was a woman in Belize who ended up with a business relationship with someone that she met in Thailand through my course. So those little small things, and obviously tools like LinkedIn are good for them. But I think these online courses and the communities that get built, because some of it really wasn't like that they were learning from me, but they were really learning from each other. So that was cool.
Thank you.
I'm Cindy from our MIT University. We also have presence in Vietnam, in Asia Pacific.
I know her too.
Yeah. So my question is, you were talking like beyond Silicon Valley. So now that we are in an international audience, like how would you think that these connections could leverage like the innovation that happened in Silicon Valley, but worldwide? You know, now that we are interconnected.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting. I mean, by the way, like a bunch, because I have I have Silicon Valley in the title of my course, even though I don't do anything. Like, a lot of people showed up, they're like, oh, we're super excited to learn about Silicon Valley. I'm like, oh, actually, you came to the wrong class, because we're talking about Cleveland. But we often I mean, I think these dynamic ecosystems like San Francisco or in Israel, obviously, there's been a lot that's been written about their ecosystem. I think we're at an interesting moment with talent, because one of the things actually I was surprised by in visiting Tech Barcelona yesterday was how many people were in person. Many of my students we have a number of people in the part-time MBA program are either working remotely or hybrid. I think that there are because a city like Barcelona is so dynamic, as we've experienced this week in food, weather, culture, attracting talent to come here is something that you're doing. How you sort of harness that talent, even if those people are working remotely for companies. I actually did a Fulbright in the Canary Islands, which I highly recommend, as in my Spanish tourism, tour. They have a lot of digital nomads, and digital nomads, which basically are sort of folks showing up perhaps to work for Facebook, Twitter, Yelp, but sitting in the Canaries. They're not starting new companies necessarily, but they've got connectivity. Obviously, they're spending money locally and doing things. And I think one of the opportunities, and again, we've only been in Barcelona for a week, but there's so many folks that are coming here. Obviously, it's not like you can stand in the middle of, the Ramblas in the summer when everybody's being pushed and being like, hey, where are my entrepreneurs? Clearly there are people visiting your city that can connect. And I think one of the opportunities, it's funny, even for people that are in some of my networks, I'm like, how can people find their way to the work that you guys are doing, or how, obviously when you participate in the course that you participated in, how do you find people? LinkedIn is an amazing tool. We spent yesterday morning at the Tibidabo, am I pronouncing that right? Thibodeau, the Monday, that co-working space. So I found an entrepreneur. We have 7 Barcelona-based startups, and I asked, we're doing mini consulting projects. How did I find them? LinkedIn. I didn't know any of them before. So I do think that LinkedIn in particular is a really nice way to build connectivity, and whether that connectivity is into San Francisco or other places. Yeah, Emma.
Okay. I just looking at the word ecosystem up there, and it's used a lot, and I've noticed that in working in the entrepreneurship world here from the consulate's perspective, people always are using that term ecosystem. And for a while, as an avid user of jargon, as an employee of the US government, I just kind of were like, oh yeah, that's just entrepreneurship jargon. Everyone just uses that word. It sounds nice. But sitting and watching your presentation and thinking more about it, it makes me realize that it's very relevant, because it's a whole. It's not just one element, right? It's not just business or just government or just philanthropy. It's like a whole, it all has to be there to really work out. And I'm wondering if who, in your experience with these different ecosystems around the world, and who has to where does the spark come from most often? Is it always business pushing government, and then government gets on board because they realize it's good? Or do innovative ideas come from government and then they open it up in business? What do you find?
No,
most
that's a great
often?
question. Of course, the perfect answer is it depends, right? So, I think innovative pushes from government to engage differently can be really effective. I mentioned in Ohio, I think part of the secret sauce for that Third Frontier program has been the importance of a match. So government was only going to do some of the support, and actually that's government leadership actually brought philanthropy in, because philanthropy, at least in the Ohio context, actually was a big piece of that match. In Cleveland, our corporate leadership in the startup space, and I think this is a difference between Barcelona and Cleveland, because I saw it even at Tech Barcelona, and we saw Nestle has some space in Tech Barcelona, and my colleague and I, Tiffany, were talking about, Nestle has a frozen foods business in Cleveland, but they're not in our makerspace, right? So in certain communities, you've seen real leadership, let's say, in the ecosystem from corporates. corporate, and everybody has different needs and desires. I mean, corporates are looking for talent. They're looking for ideas. I think many corporates realize that like it's very difficult to innovate inside a corporation. And often, I mean, Michael can speak to it. I mean, because he worked for 27 years at Medtronic, oftentimes some of the really interesting innovations, whether it's a Cardio Insight or others, are sort of acquired from the outside. So I think we do probably overuse the word ecosystem because it's like kind of a catch-all for kind of everything. But it is interesting kind of this, like I'll give a shout out, like the new mayor of Cleveland is 30, how old's Justin? 34 years old. So Justin was a student of ours and mine at Case Western Reserve University. He ran our entrepreneurship club. So you too can go from running the entrepreneurship club at Case Western Reserve University to be the mayor of our city. And it's been interesting to watch a young, really aggressive, talented, kind of visionary young person who sees the power of entrepreneurship. Like, and again, frankly speaking, like the last leader of the city of Cleveland, like wasn't super interested in this topic, right? So sometimes it's the leader, right? So, you know, with Justin, he's already pushing kind of in the entrepreneurship space in a way. I mean, we had, I don't know, our previous mayor was there like 15 years and like, I never heard him use the word entrepreneurship. So sometimes it's the people.
Hey there, can you hear me? Yeah, Franco Crazelbird. I'm one of the infamous Veale Center Fellows that Michael mentioned. I spent the week here in Barcelona. And well, in the context of beyond Silicon Valley, right, in Cleveland and Barcelona, and these big or like, you know, famous ecosystems such as Silicon Valley or, you know, what's becoming Barcelona, and kind of taking in Mario's and the last question of ecosystem. What do you think in global entrepreneurship, right, in the context of entrepreneurship, how do you think there's going to be a one-stop shop like what Silicon Valley used to be for entrepreneurship? Or do you think it's kind of what does the future look like for entrepreneurs? Do you think it's kind of like a global collaboration where different players like Cleveland, Barcelona, or, you know, San Francisco play a role, but it's kind of like a global thing? Do you think there's going to be a hub? What is the future looking like for entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, in some way, I think the future looks a bit like the present. I mean, there's often sort of, you know, efforts not necessarily well coordinated for a variety of reasons, most of them good. I mean, you know, what you guys are doing in Barcelona, you may be looking towards examples in other parts of Europe or the States, but you're going to come up with a solution that works for this local community, right? You know, one of the things that I talk about it in the course and in my book is like just patience. Like, it's very hard to know. I mean, how long is this effort? How long have you guys been working on the 20 years, right? So like, you'll probably know if it's successful in another 20 years. So, you know, political leaders are elected every 4 years or 2 years or 6 years, you know, depending on, you know, and even philanthropy. There's an organization called Endeavor, which supports high growth entrepreneurship around the world. It's a NGO, but funded with philanthropic dollars. And actually, one of my friends from Princeton is the co-founder of of Endeavor, and I interviewed him for the MOOC. And because governments aren't patient, so arguably philanthropy should be more patient. So I interviewed him for the MOOC, and I'm like, oh, you know, talk about philanthropy, and he's like, philanthropy is impatient. And he was like super critical of like the timeline. And I was like, oh, that wasn't what I thought he was going to say, but it's great. I mean, so I think these are like multi-decade efforts. And I think it's very hard to stand. I mean, again, some of this is because of changes in political leadership, like, are things going to be sustained? And then priorities of philanthropy. And then, I mean, the corporate world is changing. Of today, I mean, okay, you may have had Silicon Valley Bank as a sponsor for something, you know, 2 weeks ago, and that seemed great, and now that doesn't seem so great. So, you know, the dynamics in the business world change. So I think it's very hard. Entrepreneurs are in a hurry. Entrepreneurs and their investors want to see success quickly, but the ecosystem work we do is like kind of for decades. So I am worried. like a place like Cleveland. I mean, you know, again, we'll hear more about Barcelona, but because I think we've made some progress. I do think the point I made about Jumpstart, like you actually have to deliver returns to invest. I mean, this isn't charity. So if you're asking somebody to support startups, and Franco's got a startup out of their investment pocket and it doesn't work out, yeah, that's the most common thing that happens with startups. They fail. And hopefully you learn. I mean, hopefully the people that invest in your startup or your startup didn't, you know, I mean, we always use the analogy in the US, and, you know, I hate to say it because I work at higher ed. It's like I mean, our college education is so expensive. So it's like, hopefully you don't use your college savings for your kid to invest in great startups, because that may disappear. But it is it's a long road. And I think you need returns to kind of keep people enthusiastic. Because at a certain point, I think if people aren't making money, they're not going to want to do this work.
Hi, my name is Ashley Saw. I'm one of the Veale Snyder Fellows from Cleveland. The question I had for you is, I really liked what you said about how, you know, when thinking about how to become like an entrepreneurship hub, you can't think like, how do I become exactly like Silicon Valley? Because, you know, Cleveland and Barcelona, we're not San Francisco, we're not Silicon Valley. What do you think? How do we adapt our strategy to become like this entrepreneurship hub? How do universities play a role in creating that entrepreneurship hub? And how should that differ from, you know, what happens at Silicon Valley?
Yeah, no, thanks, Ashley. I mean, I think part of it is just lean into the strengths we have. I mean, my colleague Tiffany McNamara is here. I mean, Cleveland has a real legacy of making things, right? So we're in between Detroit and Pittsburgh. We used to sort of bend metal kind of in the production line. Like, I mean, what percent of our economy is still manufacturing based in Cleveland? It's still 40%, you know, so we're doing cool tech-based healthcare startups, but we also like have a tradition of manufacturing. You've got to lean into that. We have on our campus something called ThinkBox that many of our students have been to. It's a 50,000 foot. It's the largest open access makerspace at a university campus on the country. People are making and tinkering all the time. I mean, Franco and I were talking about yesterday. I mean, Tech Barcelona, people aren't making physical products there. They're using PCs, and we have some of those people as well, but we have a deep legacy of making things. So we're not running away from that. I mean, the other area that we have a lot of strengths in Cleveland, which I know Barcelona does as well, is in healthcare. So, you know, Cardio Insight, which we talked about, you know, is a biomedical engineering. Michael's an alum of I mean, we're one of the best biomedical engineering programs in the country. We have the Cleveland Clinic, which is one of our sort of, you know, famous, I mean, it's the best heart hospital in the world, second or third best ranked in the country. So I think some of it is like, what are the assets that you have? I mean, we're never going to be, you know, the place where, you know, necessarily app development. I mean, you know, so I think part of it is just being smart. It is interesting. I mean, you know, like all reads I thought was pretty interesting, kind of the fact that there's so much sort of shipping and commerce that happens here. I mean, the fact that Buy Hours is here. Hey, you've got a great tourism. I mean, it's interesting hearing that founder story. So I think you also want to be opportunistic. We do sometimes you just catch someone just happens to be in your ecosystem and you try to get them to not leave. And they're doing something awesome that's not healthcare or manufacturing. But yeah, that answers the question.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for coming. My name is Brian. I'm American, obviously, but I'm not one of your students.
Yeah. I don't recognize
you.
You
Don't recognize my face. That's why. Thanks for sharing your experience. I came here 9 years ago. I was in the Navy before, moved to Barcelona to do a master's program. Ended up having my kind of eyes open to like the potential for opportunity here in Barcelona. Ended up starting the first craft distillery in Barcelona, just down the street from here. I appreciate all of the comments about ecosystems. What role do you think that's just normal small business plays in these kind of ecosystems? Not every business is seeking venture capital, rapid growth, all those things that kind of come with this. Right, that startup culture. So curious.
No,
on your
it's great.
thoughts
No,
on-
thanks for the question, Brian. And yeah, we'll have to come visit. You'll have to, you know, those of age in my group. Like I said, I guess everybody's of age here. You know, a lot of this work, you're right, is sort of focused on high tech, high growth startups that would need, you know, I mean, venture capital, which sort of sounds good and sexy, is incredibly expensive and not necessarily the best financing vehicle. And, you know, more, you know, entrepreneurship, whether it's in Barcelona or Cleveland, is small business owners growing and, you know, taking out bank loan. I mean, you know, I'm assuming have you raised any outside capital, or you've been able to kind of bootstrap it? That's awesome. You know, one thing, and it's funny, like Stacy and I were talking about yesterday, like, and actually, where's Lena, one of my students? So Lena's her day job is at PNC Bank. Her side hustle, am I allowed to reveal what your side hustle is? Although I'm not sure how much baking you're planning on doing on this trip, but like, she's got a cool side hustle doing baked goods. And so we were talking about one things I think that ecosystems can do is like, we're like, oh, you should sell your products. Like, I think we often, because universities can also sort of be buyers of local products. You know, how do we highlight our awesome small businesses? Because I think that's another area, because, you know, corporations, universities can be customers. I mean, I'm assuming events happen kind of at your place as well. So I think you're right. A lot of folks, I mean, I tend to play more in that sort of high growth, high tech entrepreneurship space, but people like yourself, I mean, that you're the lifeblood of ecosystems in communities, but you probably don't get enough focus because you're just sort of growing your business. You're not raising outside capital. But I do think that there are opportunities. I mean, even sometimes you come to things like this and you plug in, it's like, oh, I didn't know about that. So, you know, we have a lot of small businesses in Cleveland that we're trying. I mean, we've partnered with our local food hub. Something else, actually, where's Sydney? Shank. So one of we have this, the NCAA changed their ability. So student athletes, which is like a huge deal in the US, you know, who are never able to sort of like do advertising, can now do promotions. It's called name, image, likeness. So Sydney did a project with us where we paired students with like food startups in Cleveland to help them practice. So I think that there's some fun linkages that we can do, but yeah, I mean, the majority of businesses look like you. They're not kind of, you know, the new funky app.
Be very successful in this field of entrepreneurship and not be Silicon Valley when you look at the problems of California.
Right.
I mean, please, Barcelona, let's not.
Interesting.
Hi, is it on?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm Ray Gallen. I'm a Case Western Reserve alumnus. In fact, I'm so old that I'm actually a Western Reserve alumnus. And I've been in Barcelona for 24 years. And I consider myself an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is a French word. And if you think about what it actually means, it's about undertaking something. You entreprendre, you are undertaking something. And I've always loved the word because of that, because it implies to some extent risk, but to some extent also just energy, caring, personal investment, and all the rest of it. It's not so much of a question as a challenge for you, Michael, but also for all the students who are here, is to think about entrepreneurship in a variety of ways. Okay, so we have our unicorns, we have the high growth and so on, and this dovetails on with the last two comments. And I will make a side comment that if you've ever actually spent time in Silicon Valley, Bay Area may be beautiful, but Silicon Valley ain't the prettiest part of it. Given that we have here in Europe a real live war going on a few hours flight from here, and that we also are all faced with the problems of climate change and all the rest of it, a sort of rapid growth may or may not be the best thing that we need to look at, and that entrepreneurship and creating and putting energy out there into the world might in fact involve some other ideas. So obviously we all have to make money. You know, nobody wants to starve, nobody wants to go hungry or make their kids go hungry. So we all have to do that. But there are a lot of ways to do that. And so I happen to run a company that is a for-profit company that has a social objective. And we make money. You know, currently we make a very modest amount of money, and that's fine for us because I'm retired. And so is my collaborator. But before we retired, we made a lot more. And we had clients all over the world, including places like New Zealand and India, and we still do. And we managed to do this without venture capital, without a whole lot of, without a whole lot of expenses, frankly. Our expenses are so small that we survived the COVID period where we were almost down to zero business without any need for help or assistance. And why I bring this up is I think that we really do need to expand some of the ideas that we have about the social role of enterprises. And I say that particularly thinking about Cleveland, because when I moved into my dorms, it was right on the heels of the National Guard who were moving out after some very, very serious racial strife that had been going on in Cleveland at the time. I was also there for the election of Carl Stokes, which was a very, very important event in Cleveland history. And so I see Cleveland also as a kind of crucible, if you like, for social experimentation, for social innovation even, because there are a lot of things that have been going on there sort of under the surface that have created enormous changes in the city over the years. And it's been a long time since I visited, but I keep in touch with people who know what's going on, and I've been impressed. Great. So my challenge and my question, and I'd like your reaction, is what do you think about this alternative idea of entrepreneurship, and what role should it be playing?
Right. No, thanks, Ray. I mean, very briefly, because we wrapping to the next panel, but thank you for the comment. I mean, I will say, and having a group of students that are here, and I know that some other students, and I think there's so much interest among young people in social impact. We have a center at the university called the Fowler Center for Business as an Agent of World Benefit, with this idea, and Ray, I know you're doing this as well, where I mean, there's many ways to kind of solve societal challenges. It could be through government, it could be through an NGO, but it could also through business. So I think that there's a growing appetite, particularly among young people, in impact. And yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is a good one. I mean, thinking, you know, to our young people that are here or in other places, I mean, how is that business opportunity going to make an impact in the world and the climate in all sorts of different ways? Good. One more. Okay, great.
Thanks for the lecture. This is very interesting for me. I'm the econ officer at the consulate. One of the things that we struggle with, or we try to understand, is what's the role of government? Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can. Yeah.
Okay. What's the role of government in these ecosystems? You mentioned where the private-public partnership is helpful. Do you have any examples of where government goes awry and like really puts his foot down and really stops the innovation from taking hold?
There's Jonathan Lerner is a Harvard Business School professor who wrote a book called The Boulevard of Broken Dreams, and it actually is on government involvement in entrepreneurship. So there's a whole book of kind of mismanaged government programs. I mean, you know, as I mentioned before, I do think that the you know, when there's free money there are some really interesting grant programs, and it's not always administered through government, but free money, and you know, our students are sometimes can get it on our campus. You know, you need that initial grant dollar. It's non-dilutive, so that means you're not taking equity in the company. I think that can be really powerful at small amounts. I think where governments can get in trouble is larger, unmatched grants to sort of catalyze, because I do think that the private sector, or, you know, in our case, I mentioned philanthropy has been a partner. I mean, coming back to kind of where I started with the US Embassy. I mean, I think exchange programs like Fulbright and other, I mean, even just the partnership today and these kind of programs, I mean, governments can help in a lot of different ways, and education is a big one. And I think bringing people together, programming, I mean, obviously kind of in this with the pause that happened during COVID, I mean, programs like the international IVLP, what is International Leadership Visitor Program. Did you come to the US as part of your program, the AWE? Not yet. Okay, maybe soon. That's next. Good. So I mean, you know, I'm obviously a big fan of the role that the US government plays in some of the exchange programs, and I think that's a great area. And we've had some amazing, you know, visitors through the State Department come through Cleveland. I'm glad. Shout out to whoever picks them to come to, because it's good, because oftentimes we're a flyover state, but we're happy to receive people to have some of these conversations. Well, that was fun. Great. Okay.
Well, I'm again. So I need to go fast because you spend a lot of time. No. Well, first of all, I would like to tell you some words about myself, and then you understand that everything that you are going to see in the next slides, that I'm going to go very fast, you understand the view and how we are finally, or why we can tell you some lessons. So in 2006, I was working for Cisco. Everybody knows Cisco, yeah? So in Cisco, I was working in public sector, and I decided to change a little bit how we were working with the partners, and I decided to involve the partners in the business. So I created this with the support of my business, my boss, obviously, to do this in Spain. It was a success. I had the opportunity to develop in Europe, was a success. And finally, the headquarters in San Jose called me to do the same worldwide. So I was in 2006 in San Jose, in the middle of the Silicon Valley. And that people was crazy. So you have no idea how was at that time. So Facebook was just arrived at the Valley. Twitter was going to appear in a few months. We usually say that in Palo Alto had more VCs than buildings. So what's crazy? So I said, well, it's perfect. This is the place to create my company. And I decided to say, okay, I'm doing this for Cisco. I'm going to do the same for another company. So I decided to create my company in Lea. And I started to sell the same concept to other companies. Like the first one was Oracle, the second was HP, and the third was Dell. So at that time, so how a person like me is coming from Barcelona with my Mediterranean English and my Latin face, I was selling the idea to, at that time, white men, because you only had in front of you white men. So why? How can I do that? Well, I discovered two lessons. The first lesson was my value. What is my value? What was my value at that time? My value, different than the rest, is I was more international because I was from Europe, south of Europe. So I perfectly understood the south of Europe. I perfectly understood Europe. I perfectly understood the south of Mediterranean, so the Arabic mentality, and I perfectly understood Latin America. And obviously it's very easy to understand the US. So I had more and big picture than the locals. So this was my value. So I use this value. And the second lesson is you never try to sell something in a different country because it's very difficult. So I decided to find a partner. And a local partner was the person who was really selling. So I was supporting. But I discovered that you need to use the last mile, the person who knows the local environment. If not, you are not going to sell. So this is what I decided to come back to Barcelona. And well, the last 15 years or 10, 12 years, I have doing a lot of things here. So I'm managing the company. The company is now in 7 countries, and we have developed projects in 51 countries. So I have been in touch with public sectors and environments and ecosystems around the world. So this is my background. So obviously, as I said at the beginning, I'm lecturer, I'm mentor, I invested in ORREIT that you mentioned. I'm one of the investors. So I know, or I can tell you a lot of things about what is the different cultures. But today, and the rest of my speeches, we are going to talk about Barcelona, about this district. Okay, and I'm going to tell you a few things. I'm going to trying to go fast. And this is the 22 lessons that we learned here the last 20 years, because this 22 ad network has next year not next year? Yeah, we are going to be 20 years old. So this is the numbers of the city, very fast. For us, what we like a lot is, as you can imagine, the first, always the first, no? The first city in the world with the most international projection. Okay, or we are the fourth most pleasant city to work in the world. So as obviously Michael mentioned it, so we are attracting a lot of people to come because honestly, I have companies in Brazil, US, UK, India. Now, unfortunately, it's not very popular, Russia. And the best world to live is here. Don't doubt about that. Okay, this is clear. So you need to come. You need to visit, and if you want to spend time around the world, go ahead, but you will come back here. Sure. So, so this is the numbers, right? Very good numbers. And obviously, for us, very relevant. So we are the first European innovation hub, and we are the first innovation district of the world. So we have 5,000 technology companies and more than 150,000 workers. So this is our ecosystem here in 22 ad network. There are a lot of type of companies, as you can see. Okay, I said I'm going to go fast. So what we offer here, what finally we do, what is, so as I said, I'm the president of my company. I'm doing a lot of things, but here in 22 ad network, I'm a voluntary. I have I'm not a salary. I'm doing this absolutely free. I'm here with you free. Nobody's going to pay me. But this is an important, when you mentioned on the time about philanthropy. This is the philanthropy. So when we say invest, think about invest money. You mentioned about money, but the other very important topic, invest on time, invest your time. So I'm investing my time with you because why? Well, I learned a lot about Michael today, and maybe I will have the opportunity to learn more about you. So I'm investing my time. And this is the concept of philanthropy here. Invest your time in the right world, in the right side. So, well, we are director of companies, CEO of companies involved in the 22 ad network, in this association, trying to support and develop the district. And then obviously with the support of our president, Enrique, who couldn't come, but obviously with the leadership of the director of the 22 network, Isabel, who finally the leadership, and we will see this, is very important. But basically, we create a network, we focus on growth, we focus on talent, we focus on create this branding of the city and everything. And basically, at the end, trying to be connected. So I'm going to tell you finally, and this is the important thing from this speech, is the 22 lessons that we learned in the last years. And maybe I'm going to reply some questions that additionally Michael said, and full support what he said before. But the first thing, the first lesson is any district, innovation district, need a public sector investment, not funds, investment. So a public sector needs to understand that they need to invest. The difference but from venture capital or other private investors is the return of the investment. A public department needs to invest in something not to recover the money, obviously, but to recover with new employees, okay, with new trained people, with new talent. So the recovery of the investment for a public sector is different, but it's necessary. If you remember Silicon Valley exists because for 53 years, the public sector, the federal government was paying every month. Why? Because this valley started in the first World War when finally, maybe you know, the war boats in San Francisco needed to go and needed a connection between the boats and telecommunication system. And they went to the Stanford, say, well, we need somebody who tell us how we can connect between the boats with radio. And they found a company in Palo Alto who finally was or had the solution, telecommunications between the war boats. And at that time, it started the Silicon Valley. So it started with public funds because US was in a war. And for 50 years, public funds were there until 71, 72, when finally the government decided to finish the race to the moon, and then was stopped. And the venture capital appeared at the moment to supply the public. This is my view, okay? But very important, public sector needs to invest. Tel Aviv is another example here close to the Mediterranean. Again, public investment, because they consider that you usually are always, all the time in war. So they are always investing. But this is the key. The second, public and private collaboration, fundamental, okay? So this is not something that the public sector is doing. No, the public sector and the private sector needs to work together. So this is the reason that 22 exists. We have the public sector, obviously we have Ayuntamiento de Barcelona, but the private sector, we need to work together. We need to talk, okay? This is the second lesson. In many places, public sector is in one side, private is another. I can tell you more stories about that, but this is another. The third, very important, is skilled and motivated talent. So we have here in this district, the universities, the main universities and academies. So the focus in training, but very important, motivated. We need to motivate additionally the talent to be more proactive and to be and understand that they can change the things they want. Okay, but this is the reason that inside any district, you need the universities, you need the public sector. So here, one of the, if I remember, but it's only high education. So we are involved with, if you remember in the US, you have the community college. So people from a community college can be here too. So here, we don't have this word, we use professional training, vocational training, okay? So it's very important and necessary. We mentioned incubators. There are a lot of types of incubators and accelerator, private, public, mixed. So this is an example that we have, but it's needed. So the ideas needs to be we usually say that the idea is coming sometimes from one person, but one person is not going to develop a business. You need a team. How you build a team? Well, in incubators and accelerators, you can find people who have the same spirit than you. So it's a good place to go. Okay, so but it's very important. We need that to involve and to create the startups. What else? Very important, and this is very important part in the city, the innovation tech center. So we need to find not only the public sector, private sector, the incubators, and the focus is to create new business. Okay, we need to find people who is working full in innovation, creating something new. So this is an example of these three entities, Leitat, Eurecat, Kim Barcelona. So they are focused to find new elements to innovate, and this is the focus for them. And they are using public and private funds. Okay, coming back to, obviously we need the local investment. And I love it what you say about the difference between capital, venture capital and capital risk. No? And exactly, that's one of the difference around the world is how is the perception of the risk. Okay, in your country, in the US, the risk is like an adventure, like something that positive. In this country, and this mentality usually is just the opposite. Risk is dangerous. So so this is one of the key elements. But now here, to be honest, from the last 10 years, this mentality is changing, and now we have a lot of people who really wants to invest in new technology, new investments, and we are very happy. Another element, very important, we need to connect with the corporates. Michael mentioned it too. Very important. The corporates might be here because the corporate tell you the future too. So when you have somebody here from T-Systems or from Cisco, the guy who is with you, which is working in Barcelona, is connected with all the countries because it's a big corporation. They know new things from another countries. They knew new things from other technologies. So corporate sometimes is a perfect place to receive new concepts, new technologies, and is perfect to understand what is happening in the world. Without the corporates, we were very local. We were always talking about us. With the corporates, we are talking about global. So another lesson, and is a complement of the previous one, is, okay, you have the corporates. The corporates are always talking about forecasts, about sales, about the success, if you are talking with them. I was inside, so I know what is this. Okay, they are always focused on these things. So they usually don't have time to talk with the rest, to talk with entrepreneurs, to talk with the startups. So this is the reason that here in this district, we have a program called Match and Play. We make the effort to match these startups with these corporates. We need to do the effort because, as I said, in corporates, they are focused on sales all the time. And then we need to collaborate with both entities. So this is something that I suggest that focus on that. What else? Not only technology is not enough. We are not talking about deep technologies or new things. No, we need professionals. We need people, we need law firms. We need engineers. We need a very good professionals around us. And if without them, it's not possible to develop anything. So it's very important to involve professional firms in different areas, okay? People from human resources, people from different things. Obviously, a lot of events like this one. When people is receiving our newsletter from 22 at Network, and you arrive to any place, everybody told us, you are doing a lot of things. You are always doing something. And yes, this is the key. If you make something, if you make events, if you create events, people is connected. If people is connected, then everything happens. So this is the reason that we focus to generate that the people is or must be in touch. The majority of them are virtual, are in person, but we discovered after the pandemic that we need to combine and create, obviously, hybrid concept. Now this event is here in present, but we are, or people is connected at home if they can come. Very important, and it's a very important lesson of this city. We need to attract international events, high events. because then is the moment that people discover your city. If you don't have these international events, then nobody knows you. So this is a lesson that we discovered with the Mobile World Congress, is the main lesson. So after that, now there are more events. So another important event, Integrated System Europe, is the second one here in the city. But now, last week I think so, Barcelona will have another important event in the gaming sector in Europe. So very important, attract international events. What else? Other important element is every area has different relevant sectors. So it's important and we suggest to focus on that sector, the activity. So if you are good in something, or you are a reference, or people knows you about that specific sector, make more effort to develop. So here we have several sectors. One could, in that case, is an example of we have a very strong audiovisual sector, very strong. We are doing a lot of, we produce a lot of films and TV shows. So this is an example in this NEO that we are going to create, this city is going to create a new hub. So focus on your core business. In our case, we have a very good health sector. We have a very good tourist sector. So my suggestion for district is to focus on the sectors that you are really at the beginning. And after that, focus on the rest. Very important, international connection. So as I mentioned it in my previous time, now we have created this alliance between the 10 top innovator districts. So the international connection is very important. We are continuing, we need to learn all the time. We need to learn what is happening in the other side of the world. We need to discover how you resolve the problems. Very important. Another lesson. As a district, we need to influence and the decision makers. We need to influence in the CEOs of the corporates, and we need to influence on our politics. So this is an example that yesterday, yes. So here in 22 Ad Network, we are interviewing all the candidates for the next elections for the mayor, which is going to happen in May. So we invite them to tell us what they believe about the future. So yesterday was the second, and nearly every week we are going to interview one of them. So it's very important to influence them, to tell them about all of these things. Another lesson. Okay, we need to split everything. So we create action groups, commissions, and each commission is working in different areas. So in this case, you can see our 9 commission. So it's voluntary people from different corporates and companies that we focus and develop one of them. Very important too, another lesson, leadership. Without leadership, forget. So we need somebody who decide to take the car, drive the car to the next station, okay? And we need to follow. So in this case, we have Enrique, which is our leader, and we follow the leader. It's very important. Without that, everybody wants to be the leader, everybody decide. So it's very important. This is part of your culture. To be honest, for us, we needed to spend a lot of time. It's one of the last lessons, because here we believe that everybody is a leader of a company, or the trainer or the coach of a team. So everybody has a decision. So for us, in this culture, in this Catalan culture, is a lesson. So we need to follow. Very important, we never forget what is happening in the real world. So we are always connected with the NGOs, with the people. So this is the list of the NGOs that are inside our association, inside our district. So we are always remembering that we are a privileged people. We have the option to receive training. We have the option to have a job, and sometimes to entrepreneur. And we need to return to the society. We need to return to the community what we are doing. So this is the reason that we are always connected with NGO, with philanthropy, and support them. What else? 24 hours open. So we need all type of companies. As we listened before, we need hotels, we need bakeries, we need restaurants, we need bars, we need basically a lot of business that support the rest of the ecosystem and provide facilities, provide how they can do it is faster and easier. Very important topic that we discovered with the pandemic too is decentralized. We don't have a central point. Is decentralized. So the decisions might happen in different places. Maybe you know, and this is a new lesson that we are learning with the new economy, decentralized economy, decentralized identity. So decentralized, basic. This is a lesson sometimes from German environment, that if you go to Germany, is a decentralized country. Obviously, you have Berlin, but the rest is a network. Is important lesson. Obviously, finally, communication. If you don't explain what you are doing, nobody knows. So you dedicate time to communicate to the rest of the city, to the rest of our community, what we are doing. And this is a for me, very relevant lesson that we are discovering the last years. So we need to involve women. Because when we are talking about all of these elements, the majority of people who is in front of you are men like me. So now for us it's very important. So we need to involve in all of these activities. We can lose women. So we are developing activities in that direction. We support now, there are 3 or 4 specific group of investors who are only investing in companies or startups promoted by women. So without you girls, we are not going to progress. It's impossible. So we are focused on that. And finally, and the last lesson, and we always explain everybody, we need to resolve elements, we need to go ahead and you become and be part of the solution. If you don't engage, if you aren't involved, you never can later request anything. So when we promote always this, be part of the environment, be part of the ecosystem, participate and invest your time, okay? So this is, I think so. Yeah. This is our lessons after 20 years developing this fantastic and marvelous ecosystem. And thank you very much for waiting this time. And I think that's all. So any question?
Thank you so much for your time. My name is Aditya. I am a Master's of Accounting student at Case Western Reserve University. So part of the big crew that's here. One question I have, so when a wrench gets thrown into an ecosystem that's potentially systemic, have you had any of those in the last 2 decades? And how did you deal with it? So the most recent example, obviously, is Silicon Valley Bank. That's a huge wrench in the banking system, and it's systemic, likely going to be. So I don't know how you guys deal with stuff like that. I've always been curious how people in different nations deal with those kind of what the heck just happened kind of situation.
Well, thank you very much for the question. Well, we can talk about Silicon Valley Bank if you want, but this is it's a consequence of some actions inside your country, and I'm not going to start on that. But here we suffered the previous economic crisis. The previous economic here was affecting the banks and the finance system and the real estate. The real estate suffered a big impact. So the real estate needed to change, to change the mentality and adapt. And basically what usually I suggest, or in that case, is obviously the public sector needs to arrive. So this is what is happening in that case, that the public, the government needs to say, well, keep calm, we continue, try to reduce the impact to the rest. But at that time, what happened is, well, the real estate is maybe not working, okay? Then is the moment to find another sectors and encourage the other sectors. So I remember at the time, many investors that were in real estate, in 2010, they moved to IT sector. So I remember that in that time, we had a specific training for people who was investing in real estate that, hey, you can invest in other sectors. So the money maybe can come to this area, move to the other one and teach them and make obviously new rules to reduce the impact of the previous crisis. So, but now the real estate, a few years later, around 5-6 years later, the real estate started again. And now, well, we will see what is happening with the new price of the money and everything. But basically, what finally we are doing here is adapt and adjust the rules of that sector and promote that the people move to the other ones. I remember we reskill it. We spend, and this is the country, we spend a lot of money to reskill people from that sectors to be working in other ones. Okay, so, well, this is maybe a good question. Anything else? No? Perfect. So now is the moment to wait. It's a long session, but try don't sleep. So the coffee is coming. The coffee is there, but wait a few seconds or minutes to listen. Albert Domingo, which is the director of UPF, the University, the Pompeu Fabra Ventures, and he's going to tell you how they are promoting the startups, entrepreneurs and startups here. So thank you.
Just in case, I'm gonna give you. Okay, so I didn't prepare slides for explaining myself, but as I've seen, everybody is introducing themselves. I'm a doctor, studied here in UPF, also at MIT. And before that, I was at UPC, so Barcelona and Boston. Some, it's not answers, but things that I heard that you are talking about. And well, I think they are good to introduce, or I would have prepared them in slides. But for example, startups, what are making us great to have startups here in Barcelona is that we move fast. You always say this, we move fast, but we move fast because we don't have legacy, and legacy in technology meaning, right? So we don't have huge servers bought in the 2000s, the beginning. We don't have huge programs that run everything in huge companies. So we start, and if now we want to use ChatGPT 4, we can do it. If we want to change, and now imagine that Facebook is gonna improve that video making in AI, we can do it. So we don't have those huge problems that big corporations have on shifting the entire company. And shifting the entire company means changing all the equipment they have. And some of them digitalized huge industries in 2005 or maybe on 2010, so 2010. And well, those maybe are on the edge of improving faster than others because, well, 10 years old equipment may be good use somehow with AI, but some of them are even, well, out of the scope. So imagine any startup with 6 guys can do huge improvements rather than big companies with 10,000 staff people. So that's one of the points that help us growing faster. We attract all AI teams, we would say, from huge corporates here in Barcelona. At least we know, Vladimir can tell, but some of our professors are incorporated to those big companies. We can talk about Facebook, PepsiCo, AWS. Well, I can continue the list, but some of them are here. Well, even Google is saying so. Microsoft AI has come. You will see all the VCs in those huge companies are Catalan, usually, because I can talk with them in Catalan, which is great. And that means they are from Barcelona. So also some connection we have in there. So when you go with the vice president of Bing, for example, it's a Catalan guy. vice president for AI in Facebook, is from Barcelona too. So you can talk with them really easy. And for that, we attract them. But the bad part is usually they take our professors and even the teams with them. But it's great because, well, we cannot offer huge salaries here at the university. So they quickly move. They continue living in Barcelona. And some different things happen with our students. They love corporates or going to the US. Before you were saying Silicon Valley for the money, etc. No, they love the perks, the style. They love to spend time learning, continuous learning. That's what they love. They don't love anymore going there for being invested, because right now I also take some notes. We have investors here in Barcelona. I would say we have more investors rather than possible startups right now. So even VC funds, they come to me asking me for Series A, Series B companies. Again, we are 10 years before this happens. We are on the, we would say, second wave of startups. It means that some of them are from founders of the first wave. And we say Silicon Valley is right now in the fifth wave, or starting the fifth wave. It means that somehow guys that started the first have invested in the second. Some guys that were huge in the second, unicorns, invested in the third, in the fourth. Now they are in the fifth. So it's a lot. And in here, we are just starting running the second wave. So VCs come like if they can invest in the US and they discover that they want to invest 100 millions or 10 millions in one startup. And we have to say, wow, maybe 200,000, it's great. So don't go for millions, go for K. And they are like, no, I want 5 millions in that. Do you have anyone that has a ticket for 5 millions? And luckily, only in biotech, which is a really good point that you show. So in biotech, yes, we usually have drug discoveries that are asking for that. And of course, they have tickets for that point at the seed level, which is great. But of course, they are asking for Series A. So, well, we have a bit of mismatch with investing and our startup ecosystem. Then, well, you talk about LeBron. Maybe you are happy that he lost with the Lakers, and that's a good part for somehow letting people go and then they fail and you're, well, that's not so bad. Then you also talk about, you explain it maybe, the fund of funds that the government here in the local government is doing. We advised them 3 years back of what to do with money and what can do with entrepreneurship in Barcelona. And we focus on not Silicon Valley, but Silicon Wadi in Israel. And we explained them this option that they started in the 60s, 70s with 100 million fund, investing 10 millions in 10 funds. They love it. And they said, but we don't have 100 million. And well, some years later, they are doing it, but with 10 million instead of 100. And instead of investing 10 million in each of the funds, they are going to invest 1. Well, from Silicon Valley, what I explained them is 8 fail, but 2 were really good. And the 2 were really good, surpass all possibilities. So the good option for them is going again for 10. So, but they have to be prepared for people telling them that they have failed, because from 10 new funds, 8, supposedly if Israel failed 8, here maybe 9 are going to fail. So, well, and I don't think they are prepared to outcome this wave of people telling them they invested in 9 funds that don't work. But I'm telling them the one that will work may surpass the 10 million they are investing. Then we also explain how to concentrate research. Next to the 22 at, we are doing Ciutadella del Coneixement, which is going to come 6 research centers that are top with the BEAST centers, and then all the CSIC, which is the Spanish research development center, that it's really scattered through Spain. It's going to have his hub next to our university, so next to 22 at. So again, we are concentrating and loving to be where all the things are happening, right? So we are building a hub, maybe without knowing it, or, well, trying to building it. I don't know how, did you have the No, somebody pick it. Oh, no, no worries. Yes, so I had the presentation is about UPF and what we're doing here. And for that, I wanted to explain a bit what also we are doing for Barcelona. So, well, UPF is a public university. Of course, we have international and research intensive professors and students. As a grad students, we have more than 10,000. That also should be a fact when you explain about 22@, how many students we have, because between UPF, UPC, and some part of the EL3 from UB, etc., maybe we are above 20,000 students in 30. So, of course, well, we should add master and PhD students where we have 3,000. And well, always we talk about ranking, higher educations, etc. Well, something we discover about rankings is then we can talk, we are the first on economics, or we are, right? Then you go picking the best part of the rankings. But when I was at MIT, it happened the same. This year we are first, next we are first, next we are first, always they were the first. And somehow then you heard, no, it's Harvard the first, no, it's Yale the first. And you were, wow. And in here happens something the same. So we are first Spanish university, that's it. And I stopped there, right? So that's what you could do. And happy to say so. Then, of course, we are scattered a bit through Barcelona, mostly next to 22@, even in the core, like you are here today in the engineering and communication campus. But of course, we teach also economics, humanities, political and law. And we have with the Biomedic Research Center, we have also together the Life Sciences Hub. Even in Balmes, we have the Masters and Economics studies that we don't show it because it's quite far up on the city. Then how do we help students or professors? Well, we have two words for that. We say spin-offs and startups. Spin-offs is because they have technology or know-how owned by the same university. And when we call a startup is because it's the student or the PhD student that in a weekend or something, they develop the new idea and the new startup. I could explain different solutions that and different companies that we exit. So for example, with spin-offs, we have BMAT that has now more than 100 people working with them. Voctro Labs, this year, January, we sold, it's the first exit as a university. So it was sold not for billions, it's 5 millions, what it was sold by, but it's the first exit as we are running it as spin-offs. Then we have other ones that I guess are gonna grow a lot. For example, Integra Therapeutics is asking now for 25 millions to grow. So directly will be huge. My window has been helped also by the US Consulate, for example, and it has a grant of 2 million from the US government just for making links. And Lucid Technologies, it's going to open finally in Australia, as it's developing more for the cinema in that place. And then, well, for startups, that it's more on my side. We have different parts that goes from My Real Food that talks about what is good or bad when you go to buy on the grocery store. Just scan the barcode and you get if it's good or bad for your health. Or Music Scene Lab that it's gonna help to orchestrate and direct an orchestra without having it in front of you. So you just use the lens and you see how to direct, because it's the most difficult part of an orchestra, because the director to rehearse, it needs all the orchestra in front of him. So imagine every hour of the director trying to direct an orchestra, it costs a lot because you have to pay all the band to be in there. Just for you to imagine different projects. Of course, it's not only UPF Ventures what we have, so we have to entrepreneurship is quite cross inside the university, goes from the innovation business shuttle, that is our TTO, that of course for spin-offs, patents and legal parts, it's great. well, there is us from UPF Ventures, where we help managing those spin-offs after they are created. We help also attracting investors. For that, I can tell a lot about VCs and investment here in Barcelona. Then alumni, of course, the ones that they exit and leave the university, but we still get connected. Manage School, Hack Lab, UPF, Entrepreneurship Society. So we have different parts of the university, from students and from grants that come back to help us. We are doing it since 2008. We give some prizes for entrepreneurship. Well, we can talk about how we help them. If you have an idea, you come to us and we validate it. So we have different programs for that. This is our own program. So we help startups from students that have their own idea, and we go from the idea to, we would say, the pre-startup. So we leave them on the edge of building the startup. And it's quite difficult for us because before we were just helping startups, which is, of course, they already had the idea, they build it, they test it, and now they come to us and we help it grow. And this one is, I have an idea, I want to do this, and we have to give them and provide them with tools and different classes and with different professors so they know how to build their own startup. Usually finance for people that is not from finance, that's the most common one. For engineers in this campus, usually we have to teach them how to do really basic things, but for finance and economics, and sometimes we have to help them connect with techie guys that they don't have because they come from management or they come from law with really huge ideas, and they think that in 1 month they can build the new app that will solve it, or well, and then you have to leverage their ideas with real ecosystem. Of course, this is because we separate it in phases. That what you have to understand. First, basically, we teach them in 1 week or in a MOOC course how they can bring us back a canvas model. So we then elaborate and understand if they are going to have some income somehow, or if it's feasible. Then we pick 14, not 12, 14 startups that we teach them a lot of courses. So marketing for entrepreneurs, finance for non-finance, negotiation, that's one I love. That class, you discover if people is ready to go to a VC or to a business angel. And well, usually it starts that you are asking them, I'm giving you 100K, will you give us 60% of your company? And sometimes they answer yes. So that's when you understand that's a good lecture you have to do with them. And finally, what we do is we help 4 new startups or future startups, and we give them 4 prizes between 6,000 and 3,000 euros. As we said, it's not a lot of money, but in here, you can do lots of things. Well, this is the mini MOOC, phase 2. When we help them, we also collaborate with different universities in entrepreneurship. That's when we join together for doing new programs as university sector, we would say. We have outside programs that we also teach in our university. For example, from Banco Santander or Fundación Bankinter, 2 different banks that help us with entrepreneurship. Then we help and join Collider initiative from Mobile Capital, Barcelona Mobile World Capital, that of course help us from entrepreneurs to professors on how to transfer their technologies. Then we do as an acceleration program from the EIT, which is a European initiative that goes in verticals. In our case, we help in the health side and in the urban mobility accelerators. Then we join with the 5 main universities from Barcelona and the City Council in the Deep Tech Node initiative, which we, another assessment that we do to the City Council is where to invest your money. Well, Deep Tech, you should start teaching BAs, so business angels, networks, and VCs, that Deep Tech should be a really good investment, but you have to wait quite long to get the returns. And well, we started this initiative that, of course, is evolving. And now I'm going to be quite fast. we displayed during the last 4 years or 5 years in 4 years from now inside the Mobile World Congress 10 initiatives each year. Well, in here you can see our dean, Oriol Amat, and our new dean, Laia de Nadal. So you have both of them on the images. Then another initiative, if we give and recognize, recognition is not difficult, but sometimes it needs a lot of screening and understanding that they accomplish all the parts to be accepted. So now they can use our logo. So it's really easy for us in that sense. What we're offering is our brand. But in return, what they get is that they are directly recognized by a seal. Of course, we also encourage them to have the ones that we have in this campus to recognize the IP22 Act. So they have both ours and yours, which is better for them. And then, of course, we also incubate. One of the incubation spaces we shared, the ones you are seeing here with Barcelona Activa. In there, we have 10 spaces with more than 10 startups because some of the spaces are shared. And in there, we help developing already founded startups. And why do I say this? Because we have in this campus, we have a space for incubating the projects. So instead of leaving them 3 years, in this one, we leave them 6 months. But during these 6 months, they have mentors, they have our professors helping them. They don't get any money, but they don't have to pay for the space. They don't have to pay for the tools. That's really important when you are doing something in communication, especially. So voice tools, image tools, all of those are getting in the labs. So you have access to a lot of things. Even we help them going to 4 years from now or Mobile World Congress because they are incubated there. So imagine that you just finish your studies, you get in there 6 months, you boost your idea, and finally you can go to the other incubation space where you can stay there for 3 years, which it's a way of helping them during this first phase, not dying so much. And that's it. So I guess I was on time and hoping you like it. If you want to ask something, or if you don't have.
So regarding your tech transfer student-led like startups, what is your perspective specifically on?
So sorry, Franco Krazelbird from Case Western in Ohio. I'll introduce myself again. But so what's your perspective regarding student entrepreneurship with the tech transfer office? So, in general, I know that, universities usually always take IP and take a percentage of royalties or equity in a company in order to provide incubation or support to students. So what is usually how a UPF goes about this? How much do you take? Usually what kind of support do you give? And how do you make it kind of enticing for a student to even like become an entrepreneur, given like these things that sometimes can be hard?
Okay, so for example, for courses, we don't take anything and we don't invest. It's just our time. For helping startups, we don't invest and we also don't take any part of them. So we help them with legal parts. We help them getting connected. We present them. We showcase them when we go abroad. We show always them. So we give them support. We connect them. Everything that's for free in the university. So we don't get anything from those companies. In return, we want that they have our seal so they can show that they come from UPF. But with professors, yes. So when there's a spin-off or a spin-out from the university, then yes, we get a percentage because we invest, we transfer our patents, we transfer our knowledge. And in those, yes, we take a small percentage, really small compared to other countries. Okay. So I guess, okay.
Thank you, Michael Hill, Cleveland, Case Western. Just a quick question. How do you define success of what you're trying to do? I mean, what does success look like for you? You said you're relatively new as a university, relatively new as an ecosystem. So you pick the timeline, but how are you defining success?
Okay, success is, in our case, for example, from the 12 spin-offs that we've created, 12 are alive, and some of them are 10 years old. So that would be one type of success that we measure. From startups that we help, it will be like 60% still survive, which is not so 100% surviving, it's 60%. But the other ones have moved to create their second startup. So we would say still entrepreneur living, so their core entrepreneur still lives. And that would be somehow how we measure that it's succeeding. And then, well, when we showcase them, if people comes and wants to ask them questions, that's also part of the success. Está? Okay, that's great. Yeah. Oh, well, no, go ahead. Do it. Okay.
Hi, my name is Kian. I'm from Vietnam. I'm with the K Western Reserve University. So I just wondered, because of the whole ecosystem that you create here, but at the very initial stuff at UPF, like, do you incorporate the entrepreneur like mindset in your curriculum? And like, how do you introduce your student into it because of these very great resources? And then how do you get like a com-sci guy, like, you know, into like entrepreneur and step out of their like major and stuff?
Okay, so you've seen this, well, I had to show it because it's easier. This course that we created for all students at UPF, we've created because we don't have as a lecture, entrepreneurial lecture in each of the careers. Yes, we identified like we have 60 different lectures in the different careers that teach somehow something related, but not in a full length. So some of them help them how it will be to create a company, other ones, how it will be to analyze the balance, other ones. So what we are doing is once we have identified, so it's 2 years since I'm in charge of this, and I can explain what I'm doing. So we identified on the first year. On the second one, we created this program that it was the easy way. The long way is the one we want to achieve. It's to make it in all different types, from history, economics, management, engineers, and medicine. I was surprised that in philosophy, in politics, it was well accepted that we are going to do the change. And the most difficult one is medicine. So medicine says that if they work for the public, well, you have to understand Spain. We have a public general system, and if we are working for the public, we cannot do so. The private, it's like the bad guy. And well, I was surprised that was really bad received in medicine, and it's because of that. Because if you are a doctor and you want to save lives, why am I gonna make money for that? So of course for a living, but we don't have the mindset of making huge money on selling something. For medicine. Of course, in engineering, yes, we help them to innovate. That's it, I guess. Xavier. Okay.
Just a quick question on investments. When you are competing with startup hubs like Tel Aviv, do you find it difficult because of the venture capital rounds that you're able to generate here? Do you find it difficult to compete with other players who are investing order of 10 more in companies to compete and to retain talent?
So yes, I will say that we are not having difficulties of the first seed investments, because usually they try to sell the product in Spain or Europe. Europe means France, Spain, UK. So the selected countries, so the ones they pick from Europe. But when they go globally, what they face is, for example, for marketing, doing a marketing campaign, they cannot compete with the ones that have 10 million fall to burn in marketing. So we discovered that then, wow, we only have 500,000 for running the company and also doing our marketing strategy. So then we have those programs right now that we help them going to the US or to Israel to explain them how to grow. But the value Then we go to the investor, and the investor looks at the company, and the way they evaluate our companies is like, no, you're just selling 200,000 a month, or you're just selling for 100,000 a month. You cannot be valued 100 millions for me to invest 10 millions and having just 10%. If I put you 10%, I want again 40% or a lot of the value of the company, because we cannot modulate our value, initial value of the company. And that's the bad part we have when they try to scale, not on the first investment, but when we want to scale, we have a difficulty. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you very much. So, well, that's all. Thank you very much, all of you. And I would like to say especially thanks to US Consulate. Thank you very much for coming and stay here, Katie. Thank you, UPF, Albert, and obviously thank you, Michael, for coming and stay. And my daughter usually say that I'm a part of the boomer generation. And the boomers, we always say that the young generation, you never spend more than 2 minutes concentrated in one thing. But I want to thank you, especially all of you. You are the new generation and you spend 2 hours concentrated on us. So congratulate you. And thank you very much for waiting and spending the time with the old people that you saw. Thank you very much.